Hello everybody and welcome to a new episode of BIM Pure. Live, I am your host, Nicolas Catellier, an architect, a BIM specialist, and the founder of BIM Pure. Today we're going to talk about Revit families. I have a lot of tips for you to help you develop amazing, powerful Revit families. Before getting there though, a couple of things to mention. First, if you are watching live today, which is February 26, 2025, you can type it in the chat where you are watching from. Already we see some people, Brenda from Northern California, Georgia from Allentown, Pennsylvania, someone from Jerusalem, Thomas from Sydney, Isham from Kamloops, BC. So thanks for tuning in. All right, and let's move on with today's sponsor, which is Bird Tools, creators of amazing Revit plugins, a mix of free and paid Revit tools. And each week we explore a different tool. This week it is the CAD block remapper. And what the CAD block remapper tool does is that it takes a link CAD file and it searches for blocks, and you can map blocks to specific Revit families and create them automatically. So you go to the ribbon and you open the CAD block remapper tool. And when you do that, what's going to happen is that the menu pops up. And here you can see all the blocks inside the CAD file, and you can map each block to a specific Revit family. So in this case, with converting AutoCAD blocks into a ceiling exhaust diffuser. So very helpful for MEP components, because there's still a lot of MEP engineers using CAD, so we can easily convert all their stuff into Revit families with the code this CAD block remapper, as you can see here. And it also works with different kind of families: ceiling hosted, wall hosted, or non-hosted family. In this case, we take this block and match it to a wall hosted. In this case, you can even specify an offset to go from the bottom of the wall. So you can see that this little electrical component is automatically placed on the wall. It is the nearest. And if you go to a 3D view, you can see it has a height, so it's not placed at the maximum at the bottom of it. So this tool is called the CAD block remapper. And the great news about this one, it is entirely free. Yes, that's right. So you can just go follow the link in the video description. Check out CAD block remapper, or go to birdtools-developers.com. And they have a mix of free and paid tools. You can try them out. All of them have a free trial. Else, we also have a coupon in the video description that you can use if you want to subscribe to Bird Tools. So thank you so much for Bird Tools. It was the final session where to sponsor BIM Pure Live, and it's been a blast collaborating with them. They have lots of amazing tools. Please support them and check them out. So yeah, thank you, Bird Tools. Next, let's announce upcoming episode of BIM Pure Live with Dave Lamont. I'm very happy about this one. It's going to be 2 weeks away from now, so not next week, the one after it. So next week is spring break. And so we'll be back on March 12 with Dave Lamont. And Dave is the former CEO of Revit before Revit got acquired by Autodesk. So I have so many things to ask him. What was it like to build the first version of Revit? What did you learn from it? And how was it like to be acquired by Autodesk? So I'm sure he has a lot of interesting stories to tell. And I want to talk about his new startup as well. He's not the CEO of that startup. He is the chairman of the board of Ace Lab, a very interesting startup that can be used for materials and products for architects. We're going to talk about that as well. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. With Dave Lamont, 2 weeks away from now, 3 p.m. Eastern. I'll announce all the details after this episode. All right. So we'll soon move to the tips. Let's see who else we've got live in the chat. Maynard Fan from Denver. Son from Christchurch, New Zealand. Laurie from Wisconsin. Mark from Fredericton. BIM Initiative from London, Kingston, UK. EA from Kansas. Jenny from Toronto. All right, what else do we have? Rick from South Carolina. Bird Tools in the house. Thank you so much for sponsoring these episodes. Okay. Are we ready to get going? Yeah, in fact, I do have a couple more things to announce. So it's the first solo live stream that I've been doing in a year. And since then, we've launched the BIM Pure membership last year, almost exactly 1 year ago. And I'm happy and proud to say that we have about 1,000 paid subscribers on the platform. And the idea of the membership is that we keep adding fun, exciting, helpful new content every month. And the next on the list is a new mini course that's going to be released in about 2 weeks with Henrik Groth-Leroen. I hope I said that right. He's from Norway. And the course is called Practical OpenBIM. It's a 45 minutes course. If you're confused about OpenBIM, you're not sure what it's for, Henrik is going to teach you, and it's not just theory. He has managed actually $1 billion facility management with using OpenBIM principle, and is going to teach you all about it. So that's in 2 weeks. And also I'm hosting a series of 3 live masterclasses. And when is that? In late March. You can get all the details and all the dates. Just check the link in the video description. 3 live events, March 24th, all at 10 a.m. Eastern time. So that should be a good time for European people as well. And what else? So yeah, we're constantly adding some interesting, fun stuff on the membership. That's going to be it for now. And yeah, it's one price point. You subscribe for a year and you get access to everything, all new content. Okay, let's move on. I got a few slides and we'll jump into Revit. So yeah, last year we've launched the new BIM Pure platform, but we've also launched the new Herrick Families course for Revit. And it's been very fun. So this live session is basically an excerpt from this course. I just took tips that were easy to give in a 1-hour session. So some topics were kind of too big to tackle into this format. So I'm trying to almost do a best of the course and try to pick really fun, interesting things that are easy to digest. Just a couple of things. Why am I talking about the Herrick families? It's been a journey since the last 3-4 years. I had multiple clients ask me to develop some quite complex families. You can see some example in these GIFs. And so to build these families, I had to do a lot of research to find the right principles. So I've decided to put everything that I've learned since into a course called Herrick Families. You can see some more example. We've got this cute little pegboard and some doors. And yeah, I love families. And this is an image, the basic principles of families. This is from the Revit OP Ed blog, Steve Stafford. And it's a good way to explain families. The muscles are that the Revit families are similar to the human body in terms of the muscles are like the constraints and the parameters. The bones, the skeleton are the reference planes and reference lines, and the skin is like the geometry. So often with Revit families, people want to jump straight to the skin and they want to model the geometry very quickly. What I found is that you need to take time to properly learn about good muscles and good bones. And then when it's ready, the skin can go on it. And yeah, most of the problems I see with family creators, they go too fast to the skin. Yeah, so again, this is an excerpt from our Herrick Families course. I know some of you in the chat are members already. You already have access to it. All of this stuff. So the course includes an ebook PDF, video tutorials, or a mega simple file, which you're going to see soon. Challenges, we're constantly adding case studies and bonus tips. We've had 5 live masterclasses, some by me, some with other experts, and we've got our doors and windows collection, Revit Families included inside of it. I've already mentioned these two. And oh yeah, that's right. Give me a sec here. Okay, so I want to do the giveaway. It's been a while since I've done one. I just need to make sure that everything's in order so it can get started. Let me see, giveaways. Okay, I'll be here. Just a minute here. I'll activate the giveaway. Okay. So it should be working. So you can type in !Raffle in the chat, right? So type in Raffle to enter the giveaway, the contest. And if you win, in 5 minutes, I'll pick the winner and you can send an email to nick@bimpure.com and we'll add you to the membership. Don't forget the ! Yeah, there you go. Got a few people getting into the raffle. So that's good. Okay, so the chat is going to go nuts with all these raffles. Meanwhile, let's get going. All right, let's get going with the tips. So the first tip that I want to share are related to the family editor, how to be efficient in the family editor. The first thing is I'm a huge fan of keyboard shortcut. But the thing is, you don't have to learn them all. You can apply the Pareto principle. So 20% of the shortcuts are used 80% of the time. So don't bother learning them all. Inside of families, to me, it's DI, AL, and CS. I'll show you exactly what I mean by that. So let's say that I create a new Revit family and open the generic model right here. And let's say that I quickly want to create kind of a rectangular frame. First, instead, I don't know what the shortcut is for reference planes. I guess it's RP, but I don't use it. I never use it. Because the way I use it, I select this one. I select any existing reference plane, and I use shortcut CS. A CS is for create similar. So it's going to create another copy of the selected element. So this way, I do something like this. And I just very quickly create 4 new reference planes to create a square rectangle shape. So yeah, CS, I use it all the time. And then shortcut DI for dimensions, align dimensions. And very quickly, I can add my little dimensions like that. I click on EQ here, EQ over there. And yeah, there you go. And what is the other one I mentioned? AL, yeah, of course. So AL, whenever you have your model geometry, you'll be using align a lot inside of Revit families. So AL, then you can align like that. But for everything else, I don't know what the shortcut is for extrusion. I don't care because I just select the extrusion tool and use CS and I create another one. I find it's much easier like that, and it removes the need to memorize too many keyboard shortcuts, quite frankly. And if it's the first time I create an extrusion, I'll just go in there. But reference planes, I create a lot of them. Dimensions, I create a lot of them. So knowing the shortcut is very helpful. All right, let's keep going. Yeah, let's talk about the scale. Something that happens with Family Creator is that the text gets very busy like that. You have lots of dimensions on top of the other. In this case, it's not too bad. But let's say you have something like this. You can very easily go in there and change the scale. And to be clear, this doesn't have any impact whatsoever on inside the project. So it's only in the family editor. So feel free to adjust these dimensions. It doesn't matter when they're loaded inside of a Revit project. And so yeah, don't hesitate to change that if you have trouble seeing what's going on. Next is preview visibility. If you want to know what your family is going to look like once loaded inside of Revit, I don't remember what year they've added this feature, but I remember in the old days, I used to load in the project and go back to the family, load in the project, go back to see what it would actually look like once loaded. So you don't actually have to do that. What you can do instead, let me just try to find a good family. Yeah, let's pick a door over here. That's a good one. If you go to the plan view, you can activate the visibility and you can see a whole lot of stuff disappears, especially in this door. So what actually is gone? Well, you can see that this door panel and the handles disappear because they're visible by default, but when this family is actually loaded, they're set to not be visible. So very efficient way to quickly test visibility. You don't have to load back the family inside of a project. Yeah, so I leave it on very quite often. Okay, next is, we're gonna talk about reference planes. This is a big point of confusion with Revit families, and it's often a difference between veteran family creators and more beginners to intermediate is that they don't really take the time to have a look at their reference planes. There are two very important parameters that you need to set up with reference plane. The first is called IsReference, and the second is the name. It's very important that you give good names to your reference planes. And also that you set the correct IsReference. I will explain why. First, okay, let's close this door and let's try to pick a family. Give me a sec here. Let's find. Okay. Okay, let's go into this one. So this is just a generic box that I use to teach Revit families. And in this case, okay, so we can see that this one has somewhat of a random name, and it's called a weak reference. So if we know that this is the left side of the family, it is much better to set it to the left side. And if we know this one is the right side, it's much better to put it to the right side. And on top of that, I highly recommend that you give the same name as the IsReference, at least if it's a side. So this one, I should call it left. And if it's a side, it acts the same as a strong reference, which I will explain the difference in a minute. So for example, this one should be front, and I will also call it front. And this one is going to be back, or should it be the opposite? I'm not sure. So let's set this one to back, and let's load it into the project. This one, yeah, there you go. Okay, this one. So what happens is, let's say I hover my cursor. You can see that when I hover, it gives me information about that plane. First, it tells me what the reference is along with the name. It tells me both information. So that's already helpful. And the other reason why you want to name and set the correct IsReference, if you're using this family as a nested family and you can swap it, you avoid positioning issues if you properly name all of the planes and set the correct IsReference. Also, if you want to use automatic dimensions with Dynamo or a script where families are automatically dimensioned, you need to set these up correctly, else it might not work. Okay, so I see that the Raffle is over. So let's just switch to the dashboard over here, and I'm going to pick a winner. So the winner is Will Fonches. Do we have Will Fonches in the house? Congrats to our Will Fonches. So Will, you can send an email to this email address. Let me switch. It's too late to enter Raffle, by the way. Too late. So send an email to nick@bimpure.com and say that you've just won the raffle, and I'll give you 1 year for free of BIM Pure access. Okay. All good. So thanks for being part of the giveaway. Let's keep on going. First, I'll give an explanation as well as what is the difference between a weak reference plane and a strong reference plane. So I'll go back to this family, and I will switch back this reference plane. I'll set it back to weak instead of a named side, and you will see the difference, what actually happens. So I try to align this family to the reference plane. You can see in this case, the entire family is moved, while in this case, the dimension of the family is stretched. Let me move it this way, so maybe you didn't fully see it. Again, I use align. On weak, the entire family is moved. In this one, the family is stretched. Although it depends on which category of Revit families you're using. I've seen some differences. In this case, it's a furniture family. But remember that the strong reference plane will pick the plane itself, which adjusts the dimension. So that's the difference between weak and strong. And if you give left, top, or right as the IsReference, it acts the same as a strong reference. Okay, and whenever you have a reference plane inside of a Revit family, it can be accessed by the Align tool and the Dimension tool. You can see, for example, if I hover my cursor like this, I can easily add either a dimension, or maybe I can adjust and align the family according to the center. So that's good overall, but if you have a family with a lot of reference plane, it can be kind of annoying, right? So let's say that I add one like this, and all these little planes, and I load this back into the project. You can see it's very annoying because I've got all these references that I don't really want to see. So to avoid this issue, if you don't want these references to show up inside of the project, you can simply select them all like this. And instead of setting up weak reference, you can simply swap to using not a reference instead. Okay, so if I load this back into the project, you can see that they don't show up as a reference for aligning and dimensioning. So whenever I finish a family, I always ask myself which reference planes might be used inside of the project for dimensioning or aligning, and which one are not. They're not helpful for that. And I set them to not a reference. Okay, and yeah, remember to put descriptive names to your reference planes. That's always helpful. Another very good reason why you should name your reference plane is that you can model elements based on name reference plane. So let's say that I go back to this family, and let's say that I delete this extrusion and all of these. All right, let's say that I create a new reference plane right here, and I decide to give it a name and call cool ref plane BP Live. All right, is that descriptive enough? And now if I select the extrusion tool, if I go to set and set work plane, in the drop-down menu over here, I can select only name reference planes. So reference planes that are not named are not included in this list. So I can pick this one. And now it asks me to go to an elevation view, and I can draw my extrusion like that. And then you can assign the extrusion N, this value. I can assign it to a specific parameter. So let's say I assign it to depth. And if I move this ref plane, you can see that this dimension is locked, right? And what is nice about using this technique instead of using align and lock and then setting dimension constraint, dimensions like this to the planes, is that you can use negative values. So check this out. So if I go over here and I change the length to minus 1,500, oh yeah, I guess, yeah, it's because I'm using it here. So you see, if you're using this parameter somewhere as a dimension that is linked to reference planes, it will not work. So I simply need to delete this one, and then it should work. Or did it? Did I set the length or something else? I set the depth. That's why I didn't change anything. So let's try to adjust the depth. So there you go. We can see that by using this feature, assigning the length value, you can use negative values. All right. So remember, it only works if the reference plane has been named. If it's not named, it's not going to work. So this is another quite hidden feature of Revit with reference plane that I've actually learned relatively recently, to be honest. So I got to thank Brian McKee for his great documentation about it. It turns out that reference planes have a directionality. So they have a beginning and an end, and a front side and a back side. So if you're wondering what is the front side and the back side is always where the text, the name text of the reference plane is. You can see here, it's in the back. So we know it's in the back side, right? So basically it depends where's the first click that you do when you create a new reference plane. So if I do one like that, and then I do one in the other direction, you can see for this one, the name is at the bottom, and this one, the name is at the top. So they're not having the same direction. So what effect does it actually have? Well, if I, let's say that I name them, this one's going to be test 1, and this one's going to be test number 2. And let's say that I model an extrusion to each, starting with test number 1. And then I will model another extrusion that I will set to test number 2. All right, like that. And let's go back to the floor plan view. You can see that they're not going the same direction. So they're always going by default to the front, right? Unless it's a negative value that is used such as in this one. So you can see this one, the back is here, so it's going toward the front by default, and this one, the back is at the bottom, so it's going in the other direction. So you cannot sadly flip the orientation of a view of a reference plane. What you can do is kind of bring this N all the way to the other direction. And you can see it automatically flips the direction of the extrusion. In some cases, if you have dimension constraints, it might kind of mess them up. In certain cases, so you got to be careful. So let's do the same thing. You can see it automatically flips the direction. So that's one way to adjust the directionality of the planes. Okay, so that's the directionality. How many of you knew about that? It's kind of a dark secret little feature, I feel, of Revit families. ScourDX asks, can you rotate the reference plane and change the extrusion direction? That's a great question. I'm not sure. Let's try it out. Yeah, you can. Yeah, I guess it could be a benefit, right? If you model a reference plane based on a name workplane, like we've set it up inside, instead of using a line and lock. Okay, now let's talk about the origin of Tara says this feature freaks me out. It's kind of weird, yeah. It's not very obvious at all, right? Okay, so let's close some of that. And let's go back to the sample project. Okay, so these are two different families, and this one, the origin of the family is at the center. So I will just draw lines to indicate the center of this family. And this one, it's at the top left corner origin. So what impact does the origin of a family has on the family? So you can, of course, just play with the arrows. But if you actually adjust the dimension here, it will always be, in this case, relatively to the center, right? So it will equally reduce the dimension or add it on both sides. With this one, though, we know that the origin is at the top left, which means that if I change the depth value, for example, you see it's relatively to this line. And if I change the length value, same thing. It's relative to this line. So you really need to think carefully about where the origin of your family is located. For example, if you have a family that's going to be placed on a wall, like a furniture casework, it would make sense to set the origin where the wall is going to be located, so at the back of the furniture. So if you decide to boost the depth of the furniture or the casework, it's not going to intersect with the wall, and you constantly need to adjust it or set a constraint. So I'm guessing most of you were familiar with the idea of the origin. So, and modifying the origin after the family has been created, as you might know, it's not a good idea because all families are going to be moved inside of the Revit project. So it's very important that you think carefully about it. And yeah, if you want to know how to set the origin, there are two planes, one in the X and one in the Y axis. So you can see I select this one, the center, and defines origin is checked. Same thing for this one. Let's zoom in a little bit. There you go, this little checkbox. The origin is also the point of insertion, isn't it? That's right. So when you load the family, your cursor is going to be at the origin. Okay, my next tips for reference planes is to set a color code. That's something I've tried to do in all my families, is have a clear way of using colors for the family to be more pleasant to modify, more intuitive. And so the first thing I can recommend is set it up for the origin. So in this case, we know that the origin of this family is at the center. So I will select both planes, click here on subcategory, create new subcategory, and I will call this origin. I immediately set the aligning line pattern, and I use a different color. I like to use this kind of, what's that, fuchsia, pink, whatever, to indicate the origin. So if someone modifies the family in the future, and it's not me, it's going to be quite obvious where the origin is located. Be careful though, it's possible that someone might check this box and suddenly this plane is not the origin anymore. So make sure that if you use this trick to switch the subcategories of the planes, so it's always up to date with what's actually going on. Yeah, pink is a great choice. Yeah, some colors don't show up great. Yellow is pretty hard to read, I found. And there's the insertion point. Let me find other examples where I like to use this. Maybe in the Windows collection. Yeah, so this is the BIM Pure Windows collection. Let's open one of the families. So in this case, we have these planes indicating the origin. Oh, maybe it's only in the nested family that we've used this little trick. Or maybe not in this case, but sometimes, for example, the glass of the window, I like to use blue colors, right? So there are typically 3 different planes for the glass, one at the front, one at the back, and one at the center. So by using color, it makes it really visual and easy to visualize the families. And else, something that I like to do as well, and this one should probably be inside of the door collections. Yeah, let's open this one just for fun. This is a pivot family, and let's try this one. Yeah, in this case, for doors and openings, I like to set different colors for the rough openings. So where the hole in the wall is actually going to be located, which is typically slightly different. So in this case, we have 10 millimeter distance, roughly half of an inch, in between the net dimensions of the door and the rough dimension. So I saw someone in the chat says use them for the coordinate, the origins, the edges. Yeah, there are many ways you can use colors. I would just warn, don't go overboard. Don't go too crazy. I've seen families where maybe there are too many of them, but that's more rare. Typically, there's just way too many planes. They're not named. They don't have the correct IsReference. All of them are active inside the family. They've not been set to another reference. So, like, to me, if the reference planes are well organized in the family, it's a great sign that the family, I'm going to have a good time playing with a specific family. So let me just close some of that stuff. Okay, maybe this one I can keep. All right, what's next? Okay, so that's it. We're done for the reference planes for now. Now I want to talk a little bit about some of the hosting type for the families. You have non-hosted families, wall-hosted families, ceiling-hosted families. You also have face-based families and workplane-based families. And I find that most people are not that familiar with workplane-based, or they don't use them enough because they're pretty great in my opinion. So let me show you a couple of examples. So in this case, I'm using acronyms to name the different kind of families. So in this case, FB stands for face-based. So maybe you're familiar with this one. It's a kind of family that you can place on any face of any object. So you just make sure that you use place on face. You can place it like that. You can hit spacebar. So it's pretty neat. But there are some limitations, and you must use a very specific family templates. They also tend to be quite buggy inside of model groups if you're doing kind of apartment projects or repetitive layouts. Still, they're quite helpful, but they have some limitations. And the type of families that most people are not aware of, or not enough in my opinion, is our workplane based families. In this one, they're not made from a specific Revit family template. It's just a checkbox that you need to check. But the behavior is extremely similar. You can also place them on a face, just like that, right? And it's just very subtle differences. For example, if I select the face-based families, it says the host. For the workplane base, it says the workplane. In this case, I can set an offset, which I cannot do with the face-based families. Other than that, they're quite similar. The difference, though, is that inside of the workplane-based family, you can see there's no face, there's no extrusion inside of it. You only need to check this box. So you can take any Revit families you've ever created, assuming it's a non-hosted family, check this box and you can place it on any face of any element. And they're also great for nested families. I'm going to explain why in a minute. And if you look at phase-based families in the other side, you can see there's an extrusion that is included by default. So just to be clear here, when we're talking about phase-based families and workplane-based, when you create a new family, you have got a template that is generic model phase-based, right? But if you want to create a workplane-based family, there's no specific Revit family template. You just need to select the generic model one and check the box that says workplane base, and probably uncheck always vertical if you want to rotate it on any surface like I've just shown. So that's the big difference, but workplane based families are amazing, especially for nested families. Okay. So I'm going to do the bridge talking about workplane based families to talking about reference lines. I could talk about reference lines for a while, but the main thing you've got to know about reference lines is that they're mostly used for angles. If you want to have an element, a family that has an angle, let's create a new family right here. I'm going to pick a generic model, the regular one, and I will model a new reference line like this. Let's say I put it this way, and I will align and lock the origin, kind of the pivot here, so it's locked this way, and I can add a dimension angle to this reference line. I will just very quickly give an angle, and now I can play with this angle. And something special about reference line in Revit is that they're visible in 3D views, while reference planes are not visible by default. Okay, so, and if I hover my cursor, something interesting you can see with the dashed blue lines, each reference line in Revit has 4 work planes. So 2 at the end point and 2 along the line, along the length of the line. So let's go back to the slides here. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4 planes. And what's interesting about it is you can model geometry directly to these specific planes, or you can even nest families on them. So let's say that I go create an extrusion. I go to create extrusion, and I can pick a plane. And you can see I can pick this one, pick this one, this one. Let's say that I pick this. And then now I can model this extrusion here. And what's interesting about it, there you go. If I change the angle, it's going to follow, right? And I could have placed it at the other end, along the length, elsewhere. So that's good. The next thing that I want to show you is with work plane based families. The reason I am so in love with work plane based families is that you can also use the same principles with reference lines and planes and angles. So let me just load this family into the family number 3. Okay, we'll just go to 3D view like this, open the families, find this one. I'm going to drag and drop it. This time though, I must not select place on face. I will select place on work plane. This option, placement plane, is going to be, I will pick it. So let's say that I pick this one, and now I pick this family. And in theory, you can see that it follows the angle as well. So that's why I really like workplane based families. They're great as nested family if you want to rotate components very easily. They go really well with reference line as well. So this, for example, the way I would do it if I want to create a door panel that opens along with a swing for 3D views and renderings and so on. Okay, so that's tip number 11. A quick one, tip number 12, convert phase-based families to non-hosted. So sadly, you cannot go the other way around, and it's by default, you cannot convert a phase-based family. When you start, it remains phase-based, except there's a tip. So I have this phase-based families over here. Let's say that I want to convert it to a regular family. What are the steps again? Yeah, you change the extrusion length to 0. So this element, you cannot delete it. You can see the X, the red X is grayed out. However, I can set this to 0. And it says the constraints are not satisfied, blah, 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 and the extrusion is too thin. You remove and then you delete it. And then you can see the host, it has turned from phase base into nothing. So that's now a non-hosted family. You can even use it as a workplane based family and easily embed it in other families as well. There you go. Should I take some questions now? Let me just finish a couple more tips. Okay, so I'm now at formula, so good time for the question. Does the number of ref planes from Taras, I'll take a little sip of beer at the same time. Does the number of ref plane affect the family weight or performance, or it's better to constrain directly to the object? It's always better to constrain to the reference planes as much as possible. The other way around, constraining geometry with other geometry, it slows the family down. I would say no, like reference planes don't add a lot of weight. It's mostly geometry, complex formula, complex constraints. So typically it's not a problem to add planes, name them. As Rena said in the chat, is there a way for placing windows in between wall automatically? I'm not sure what it means from Edward. When is always vertical used? That's a great question from Butch Garris. Let's go into Revit. So let's go back here. Do I have always vertical? Yeah, you can see there's a family here. It's called always vertical. And no matter on what face I place it, it always keeps the same orientation like this. So the text will always face the top. So let me give you 2 examples, a chimney or trees. Trees are always vertical, right? And a chimney, you want to place it on an angle faced, but typically it's always vertical. So these are 2 examples where you would leave the always vertical box checked. In most cases, I would turn it off though. You're right. Okay, there you go. So let's keep going. Okay, now we're going to talk about formulas. I got a couple of quick tips and then some of them that go a bit more in depth. So let's open this family. So what is the first tip? Okay, so my first tip is be careful with parameter names that include symbols. For example, this one, if it includes a dash, you will have issues because it said it's not a valid parameter name, because Revit thinks that you want to do a subtraction. So for example, if I create a new parameter that I call parameter dash, like this, and I try to use it inside of the formula, for example, parameter dash minus 100 millimeters, like this, it says it's not a valid parameter. So there's a very easy workaround. You just use brackets. Just give me a sec, my keyboard is messed up. There you go. So you add a bracket around the parameter name and it's automatically fixed, right? The next thing you could do instead is modify this parameter, click on the pencil icon and just remove the dash. That's another scenario. And if you rename a parameter and add a dash or a mat symbol, let's say I add plus, for example, like brackets will automatically use wherever you've had already created the formula. Okay, so there are easy workarounds, but typically I don't like to include mat symbols in my parameter name. Another quick one that it's just a little time saver. I think that most people are not aware of this. If you have a really long and annoying parameter name, there you go, and you want to use it inside of formulas, and I've done this a lot. I'm guilty of this, where you start to type the parameter name itself, and it's really annoying. So I like to, you can actually just click over here and you can copy the parameter name and easily paste it there. So that's a super simple way of working. But the tip that I actually prefer, whenever I create a new formula, a new family, and I want to create multiple formulas, I like to start with really simple parameter names, and when the family is ready, I rename them to something more descriptive for the end users. For example, I might just start with A and B, and then when it's done, rename them to distance door and distance floor. And the good thing about it is that the formulas are automatically updated with the correct parameter names, just like this. So let's give an example. So let's say that I start with parameter called A, parameter called B, parameter called C. And this one, I call it, A plus 0.5 times C, something along those lines. And then, of course, before loading the family into the project, I want to be more descriptive. So I can click on the pencil icon and call this something that the end user will understand, such as distance door. I don't always do it. If it's just length and width, that's fine. But if it's very long, I don't like typing these out in the formulas. Okay, let's keep on going. We're at 16. Oh, it's 13 minutes to 4. Okay, I need to speed up. Notepad++. So this is a free tool where you can type in your formulas. So whenever I'm working with complex formulas with lots of embedded ifs and stuff like that, I like to use this tool, especially more than 2 or 3 parentheses. You can go if depth is larger than 5, and then you have another parentheses, and then another parentheses. Then you can, by clicking, can see if I can see, for example, that this parentheses is missing here. And also, if for some reason my formula is messed up, there's a mistake. Well, I don't lose it. I keep this file. So I don't always use this, but if I have lots of complex formulas, I like to open this up. It's Notepad++. It's a free tool. All right, now let's talk about visibility formulas. There's a misconception that for some people that for visibility parameters or yes/no parameters, you need to use if statement. And it's not the case. There's no reason why you would use an if statement for a yes/no parameter. So if, let me add a yes/no parameter, a test BP live, there it is. And let's say that I want it to be visible only if, what parameter should I use? Depth. Okay, let's use depth. If depth is, that's something that a lot of people would do. If depth is bigger than 1200 millimeters, they will type 1 equal 1, else it's 1 equals 0. And this does work, right? And if I change this, it's fine, but you're just making it too complex for no reason. So you can just get rid of the if statements entirely and just put that. And it does the exact same thing. So the if statement is redundant. So I mentioned this because I see a lot of people using if statements for visibility parameters, and it's not necessary. Yeah, Boolean is already a if. It's already binary outcome since it's a yes/no parameter. So you don't need to use the if. However, for visibility parameters, I like to use the and or and not format. So I don't have enough time to explore. I could have done a session just on all these operators. But for example, you could say type and let's say there are 2 conditions for a specific piece of geometry to be visible. The depth should be above 1200 millimeters. And let's say that distance door should be equal to 4 millimeters. So both of these conditions must be met for an element to be visible, but you can see that right now they're not. But if I boost the depth, suddenly it turns active. But if I change the distance door, it does not. However, I could switch the and to use or instead, and now only one of the 2 conditions must be met for this element to be visible. And also, the not statement is very helpful. So for example, you could use user box to visibility. It could always be the opposite of test BP live. So whatever is the visibility of this one is going to be the opposite of it. All right. So again, the lesson here, don't use if statements for yes, no visibility parameters. It's not necessary. You can just type in it directly. It's already a binary outcome. Okay, so Revit doesn't have greater than or smaller than operators, so you can use this formula instead. So you just cannot type the symbol into a Revit family, it will not work. So the workaround that can be used instead, in this case, let's see what we have in the slide. Yeah, let's say this is for a visibility parameter. And we only want, let's say, this box to, if it's greater than or equal to, which one? Distance door. So it should be 5 or more in this case, but it doesn't work. So we'll just type in the opposite, which is not distance door is smaller than 5. Or should it be bigger than 5? So if I switch to 5.1, so in this case, it's smaller than or equal. So if I type in 4.9, suddenly it is visible. So you just need to type not and do the opposite to get this greater than or equal or smaller than or equal, just like this. So it's kind of an annoying workaround. I just wish they would add this feature into the Revit family editor directly. I always get a bit confused, even if I remember it. Okay, next. This one, yeah, about the little fruits. But there's a way that some families are made that you can create a new integer type of parameter, and that it's kind of a little switch where you can activate multiple options. Let me just call it switch, for example, and let me just remove the visibility of this one. So let's say that this box is visible when the switch value is 1, this one is 2, and this one is 3. So what you can do, if type in fact, you can just put this to 1, switch equal 1, like that. There you go. This one is switch number 2 equal 2. And this one is switch number 3. So you can easily switch from the visibility of one to the other. And you can even add a tooltip where this information would be displayed for the user. And you can even set it up for certain dimensions of certain elements. So if you have multiple options, instead of having too many layers of if statement, it can be a good way, a good workaround to work with many options. Okay, here's a quick one. I had a client who was working with Office, and let me very quickly create a new text parameter. There you go. So let's enter a random value. This is the text for my first. Which one is not right? Parameter length box 2. Where is that? So let me just cancel them, and I will create the new text parameter again. Random text, and it's going to be furniture. It could be kind of a serial number of the furniture. Let's say I just enter a value and then I model a 3D text, and I place it on the level. Let me try that again in this view. Okay, I place this text over here, and when I select it, I can click on text on the small rectangle and associate to this text parameter. You can see, so I had a client use this for furniture where they have different serial numbers. And for example, you can have different types. If I create a new type, so this is type number 1, type number 2, so I can, for example, just play around with this number. And you can see it's automatically updated whenever you switch the type. So I wouldn't recommend using 3D text most of the time, but I've seen some clients that really want it to show in 3D. So that would be a good case for it. Okay, a last one for is about rounding. So we're gonna go a bit overboard. This might last for at least another 20 minutes. So if you are in a rush, just know that we'll keep going a bit more. So let me go over here, and I will just copy and paste this because I'm lazy. Okay, so something that you can do is have, if you want to round values of the user, you can have a value called user length and another value called actual length. And let me just put them one next to another. And let's say that user length is this value. And for this one, just gonna go round, divided, multiplied. I never remember the order. So it's going to be round, user length, divided, and then you can set the increment. For example, the increment is 100 millimeters, and then multiplied by 100 millimeters. Did I get this right? Divided, multiplied. The following is not, not sure what's going on here. Oh yeah, maybe it's this. Okay, let me try it again. I think there was text. So round user length divided by 100 millimeters multiplied by 100 millimeters. There we go. Okay, let me try it again. That's live demo for you. So user length and actual length. And user length, let me set it at this value. And I'm going to round user length multiplied by 100 millimeters divided, and then it is multiplied by 100 millimeters. There you go. It is working finally. I think there was just a glitch in the formula. So if I change this value, what is nice about it is that if the user, let's say the user enters a really random value like this, let me zoom in, like this formula is actually be rounded to the increment of your choice. So it can be 100 millimeters, it can be something else, it could be 50 millimeters. You can type in the formula for the increments. So it's kind of a way to protect the dimensions. Yeah, you set kind of a, yeah, later on we'll set the lower and upper values as well. Okay, a quick tip. Now we're going to talk about the visibility of families. And do I have some windows in there, or should I just pick from my collection? Let's go to the collection then. So you can see this is from the BIM Pure Windows collection. You can see I switch. This isn't fine. This is coarse. You can see when it's coarse, it's only a line, because in this scale, it's not that bad. If it's at that scale and we have the double door, it can get something like this. It can get a bit messy in too many lines. So that's why I like to set only a single line. And this is actually a nested panel family. So let's go inside of it and let me show you how that was done. So you can see the actual glass element when it is modeled. Let me switch to the shaded view. This is the glass, and I've set it up so it's not visible in plan and when cut in plan. And instead, in this view, I've modeled a single line. You can see this is a line. If I click here, the single line. No, I didn't get the right element. Yeah, there you go. So first, I check the box, show only if instance is cut. And secondly, it's only visible in coarse and medium. And then I've also modeled a separate masking region that is also only visible if the instance is cut and only visible at the fine setting. And that's how you are able to achieve having only a line in coarse and fine, a coarse and medium, and the double all the entire thickness a defined visual setting. Okay. Next on the list is about the visibility of family. I have way too many stuff open in Revit. Let me close some of them. I can close this one. I can close that. That's fine. Okay, there you go. That's my sample file. Okay. And by the way, if you're wondering what this file is, it's included in the Hierarchic Families course on BIM Pure. And all the chapters, you can see this is chapter 8.7 of the course about overhead graphics, and the families are here if you want to play along. But for now, what I wanted to show, if I go, this is chapter 8. So you have seen in 3D, we have 3 identical or almost identical families, right? So back to the 3D view, you can see all these families, they're at the same height. But if you look, this one is classified as a door family. This one is a generic model. And this one is also a door. But the difference between these families is that Revit, there are 3 categories where it shows in the overhead, which is, if you look at the view range, it is located in between, there you go, in this range over here, in between the cut plane of the view and the top. So that's kind of a esoteric concept in Revit, the view range. Like the basic of it is quite simple, but then all the overhead setting, it's a bit complex, quite frankly. So everything in between this range, 1200 millimeters and 2600, all families in there, only 3 categories are going to be visible. That's casework, windows, and direct model. You can see the door family that is in there is not visible. So my first step, and you can see that this image, let me hide myself, kind of explains the concept as well. But there's a tip to make them visible if you want, and it's to add an invisible line to trick Revit into thinking that this family is being cut. So if I have this family and I go to, well, you can see it right here in the elevation view, the family is modeled higher and we have this natural model line, but an invisible line, and this line is being cut, which means that the entire family thinks it is also cut and will display whatever range it is actually located in. So in some case, it's a good trick if you want the family to appear in your plan view like that, and it's not a generic model, a window, or a casework. All right, hoping that was clear. You know, overhead settings, not always that obvious. Okay, that's another quite esoteric setting. I'll just take a little sip of beer before going there. You know, all good. Some people are talking about the lookup tables. It's covered in the course, but it was frankly too big of a topic to cover in this session. Maybe I should do one live session only about that someday. Okay, for now, a lot of people don't know. Let me see, is it this one? Oh yeah, so that's very interesting. Let me switch maybe to this scale. Okay. There is a view range setting inside of Revit families, but most people don't know about it, and it's kind of hidden. Let me give you an example. This is the exact same family, the exact same geometry. There's no difference between these families except for one setting, and it is the view range inside the family. You can see they're all in the same category. So if I open this family, have a look at it, it's quite simple. It's a box with this little extrusion right there. But you can see by default, you cannot see the view range in the view properties. However, you can click here on reference level, and there you are. The view range is there. You can click it, and then you can play with the setting. And depending on what you set there, the visibility is going to be different. So if I preview the visibility right now, I've set it up at 800, which is going to cut this element. But let's say that I set the view range lower, really low, and suddenly this element is not cut anymore. The family is going to look like this. right? So we don't see kind of this small appendix anymore. So it's quite important that you have a look at the view range setting. And this is despite the setting where the family is loaded in. So whenever you work inside of families, you just you should set up a view range that makes sense inside of this family. So it could be something like that, or it could be 800. And when you are happy with what you see, keep it this way. And then we could go into the other layer of setting up the view range for nested families, but that's kind of on another level. So just getting familiar with this concept should be enough. Yeah, so you can see the exact same family, just different view range cut plane level. Okay, so we're almost done. A couple of final things I wanted to show up. And it is the 3D text warning. So I've already shown you, no, not this one. Do I have a 3D text warning somewhere in there? Oh yeah, there you go. This one has one. The length is too big. So it's not something that I use very often, but in certain cases, it could be worth it. So this is a 3D text that says the length is too big. Max is 1500 millimeters. And if I switch the length to something smaller, like 1200, you can see that 3D text disappears. So it's a way to warn users to not go beyond a certain range. So I wouldn't use it in most cases because it's a 3D element. So you just kind of add more stuff to your models. But if you have a really critical family and that users tend to just play with the dimensions without respecting them, it could be a way to fix it. And the way to set this up is quite simple. You create this 3D text, and there's a visibility parameter that is set to 3D text warning. And the formula is extremely simple. It's just length is above 500 millimeters, where this 3D text is going to show up. So if I play with the length and set it up above this value, you can see that it's going to show up. So it's actually something that I've used in a couple of families. For example, the one window family where a spacer needed to be added to the family past a certain length. We decided to put a 3D text warning saying, hey, switch to the other kind of window with a spacer because the length is too big. Okay, all clear? Let's keep going. So that's a cool trick that I've picked up from John Pearson, formerly from Team Parallax, now working for Autodesk on the Dynamo team. But I think it was at AU or Build session. We've shown this, and this is a really cool trick. So by default in Revit families, you have grips that show up in plan views. Okay. Yeah, this one has it. So let me show what I mean by that. What chapter is that? Is that 9? Yeah, okay. So by default in Revit, yes, you have grips. Sorry, entered the family by mistake. You have grips in plan views and elevation if it's an instance parameter dimension. But grips by default, it will not show up in 3D views. There's a workaround though. So let's start from another family, say this one. You can see this box right now doesn't have grips in 3D views, only in 2D views, in plan views, and elevations in section. But having them in 3D views is pretty cool, right? So the trick to make them appear is quite simple. I will draw a reference line like this. And in fact, for each side where I want the grip, so in this case, 4 different sides. One over there, one like this, and one like this. So I can briefly test to see if they follow. So yeah, they match the dimensions. And so now I will set a dimension here between this reference plane to the reference line. Same thing on the other direction. Same thing at the bottom, same thing at the top. And both of these, I will set the depth parameter. And both of these values, I will set the length parameter. So now you can see that the dimensions are kind of tripled. Instead of having one, I have 3 of them. But that's the way to make this workaround function. Let me load this back into the project. And now suddenly you can see that grips appear in 3D views. I could have added them for the top and the bottom as well. So that's pretty cool, right? The only thing I would warn you about is that when you use this, it kind of gives you, it doesn't round the values at all. So you can see we have lots of digits. And if you're using inches, it will be like, 256 inches, something along those lines. But yeah, like in some families, if you want to make them really user-friendly, it's a cool way to do it. Okay. Almost finished with the tips. This one is about protecting the family dimensions. And so previously I've shown how you can round values of the family by setting increments. So now we're doing the same thing, but in addition, we're going to set a minimum and a maximum. So I'll try to keep the formula around because I have a hard time remembering it. So let's say, let's use this one, in fact. So we have the length parameter. So I'm going to create a new parameter that's going to be called user length. Okay, so that's the one that users are going to be allowed to play with. And the real length is going to be calculated. So we could say, for example, the minimum should be 500, maximum 1500, and we use increments of 50 millimeters. So I'll start writing my formula. Let's start with the increments. That's the easiest part. Okay, so first round user length. Let me zoom in a bit. Divided by what increment should I use? 50 millimeters. That's about 2 inches. And then multiplied by 50 millimeters. Okay, so that is so annoying. Is it good now? Okay, so that the first part is done. Whatever value we enter here, it's going to round to the nearest 50 millimeter increment. So now we're going to set a maximum value. And for that, we're going to use an if statement. It's going to be if user length is above 1500 millimeters, the value is going to be 1500. So everything above that, we're putting back to 1500. And then I could put a comma and put the rest of the formula. You can see if I type in 1600 like that, it reverts it back to 1500. So we've functionally set a maximum value. But if you want to add a minimum now, after this comma, I'm going to type in another if statement. So a nested if, that's when the Notepad++ could be good, but I'm not going to use it for now. So if user length is smaller, give me a sec. Okay, it's smaller than 500 millimeters, make it 500 millimeters, else use the round formula. I'm going to add under parentheses. Let's try that out. So if I enter a very small value of 200, you can see it's rounded. The dimension is sent to 500. And then it's rounded to a specific increment in between. So it's this way you have a minimum value, you have a maximum value, and you have increments. This is very helpful. Let me give you an example for cabinets, like casework, where, for example, typically it's rounded to the nearest inch or to about 25 millimeters or along those lines. So this way you can ensure that users don't start entering completely random values or values that exceed certain limits. So that's the way to do it. And the parameter that is set up inside of the family is this one. It's the length. But this is the one that users can try to modify if they want. Okay, last tip, organize parameters in a pleasant way. What I mean by that is a sign of a really bad Revit family is when you look at the parameters and it's just a complete mess. And there's way too many parameters, they're badly organized, the naming convention is not good. I'll show you an example of something I think is good. That's from our Windows collection. All right, let's pick this one. Well, first, all the parameters that are used for calculations, for formulas that the users are never going to interact with, we just need these parameters. You can just set them to other. And if you're wondering how to do it, if you select one parameter, click the pencil icon, group parameter under, instead of dimensions, you can set up other. And then those that I keep in dimensions, I like to have a clear hierarchy. So I always start with the most important dimensions. So if it's a window family, you better put width and height first because these are the most important dimensions. And then I try to follow certain logic. The next one is the vertical distance. So in this case, for example, we have a checkbox where we can make the vertical distance of the family equal, else I can put in something like that. Oh no, not like that. Let me try it again. Yeah, this one. There you go. And then the rest of it follows a logical order. So we have the glass offset and thickness, the frame width and depth, the subframe, the trim dimensions, and then the rough at the end. But everything, it's coherent, right? I spent some time thinking about what would be the most user-friendly way of doing it, where users wouldn't be confused. So making sure that users are not confused is a very high priority when I create families. And sometimes I have an idea for really complex families, and I sometimes decide to just make them more simple and divide them into more families, because I don't want users to be confused. That's very important, that users have a great experience and things are user-friendly to them. In this case, you can see that I have a family type parameter where I can switch between different opening options for this family, as you can see here. Oh, well, I tried to group them under something else, such as general. And if you have visibility parameter, put them under visibility as well. Okay, let's see. I have a question from Curtis Ridenour asking, when do you find value in putting the effort into an adaptive family? I don't use them a lot, to be very honest. Every once in a while with something very specific. There's a chapter about it in the course, in the hierarchical families course. But it's quite a lot of effort. I would need something a bit crazy to use. But I've seen some really amazing use case of adaptive. But it's a big learning curve, I would say. All right. Well, I hope that you have enjoyed this session. If you like this and you want to get more, this is just a sample of what we've built in the hierarchical families course, which is the result of years and years of research to create the best possible Revit families. So the full course include all the downloads, the families collections, the windows, the doors, the family sample, the challenges, our Gardens community where you can ask questions. We've also have live meta classes. Maybe I can show some of them. Yeah, there you go. So that's inside of the course. Yeah, there you go. Well, first we have some case studies. We have a cavern-shaped door, a giant wooden pegboard, a ladder, engineered floor system, bat insulation. Some of them are in YouTube, but some of them are exclusive to the subscribers. We have bonus tips and Q&As, and these are all the live sessions that we did for members only. Most of them are by myself, but we have guests like Brenton for casework and Ryan Schock for MEP families. So all of it is available in the BIM Pure membership. And the way that BIM Pure works, you subscribe and you get access to everything. All the courses, including the upcoming practical OpenBIM, which is going to be released about 2 weeks away from now. And and yeah, it's been a blast. We've started this 1 year ago, and it's been very fun. And we're trying to bring courses from many different instructors. We've had a course with landscape, one about culture, leadership, and technology with Nehama, another with the Revit API, building custom toolbar with Eric Fritz, and we have a lot more in the works, along with the family collections, the scripts, our upcoming Dynamo Spacecamp. All right, that's enough for a promotion. Any more questions? All right, is there a specific tip in there that you were most surprised about? I think it was a mix of things that seasoned family creators probably already knew, but with a couple of curveballs in there, like the view range settings, the directionality of ref planes, and so on. Okay. Well, I think that's it for now. So I'll just give a shout out to Bird Tools. Thanks for sponsoring this episode in this season of BIM Pure Live. And check out all their free tools and pay tools. They have the tool of the week is the CAD block remapper, where you can convert a block inside a CAD file to a loadable Revit family. And in 2 weeks away from now, with Dave Lamond, the former CEO of Revit, when Revit got started, Revit 1.0, and when it got acquired by Autodesk in 2002, and now the chairman of Ace Lab, a promising startup. That should be very fun. And subscribe to BIM Pure. We've got a question from Dylan saying, what is the max size family you recommend? I like to keep my families below 1 megabyte. If it goes beyond it, there has to be a really good reason, right? So I don't have strict limit. Well, they can be strict limit. I will say 2 or 3 megabytes, it would be the max. But if it's really warranted, there's a good reason why this family is heavy. It's a very important family. The geometry needs to be detailed. We have many options. It's a family that we use very often in the company or in the project. I think it can be worth it. And yeah, so if it's worth it, it's fine. But the problem, of course, is that often with heavy family size, is just people just download families on Revit City or bimobject.com, and these are very heavy families for no reason. It's just a furniture that is way too detailed, and you don't need that amount of detail in your project. So if you have a family that you need that amount of detail, it is helpful. It helps you out, and it is required. Then it's okay to be slightly heavy. Like, just the justification to me is important. So ScourDX says under 1 megabyte is if it is used everywhere, above 1 MB only in specific location that is in use multiple places. What elements other than the geometry affect the file size? Yeah, geometry is a big one. The number of nested families also inside of it. So if you have, well, it's not only about the file size, it's also about the speed. If you have too many nested families, especially if you're using arrays, which we didn't cover in this session, but arrays can slow down your families if you have too many nested elements inside of them. But yeah, geometry is the biggest one for sure. Imported geometry, no, that's the main cause of issues for heavy family size. So try to use native geometry as much as you can. Okay. I think that's it for today. So thanks to everyone for watching, and I hope, did I receive the email from the winner of the, I didn't. What was the name of the winner again? I didn't hear anything from him. Will Funches. Is Will Funches in the house? Where are you, Will? Else you're gonna lose your prize. Will, give us a sign if you're still there. Else I'm gonna pick another winner. Sorry, but typically I look at my emails and the winner, I've already received it at the end of the session. And you know what? We're going to pick another winner. Oh, Will's there. Hey, Will, send me an email, right? At nick@bimpure.com. All right, I almost passed on you. Nick@bimpure.com. There he is. Hello, Will. All right, send me an email, Will. Okay, I'll grant you access to the membership. Okay, that's it for now. So thanks for everybody for watching this session and for asking great questions as usual. All right, see you in 2 weeks.